My name is Ryan Frey. I'm from Morganza, Louisiana. I farm with my family down there. We're scattered around 12,000 acres down there, and we also have an irrigation business on the side that I mostly take care of. So I pretty much manage all the irrigation on our farm, as well as our side irrigation business that we have. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Phaucet program and using the soil moisture sensors and kind of the systems that we use that we find that best fits our operation. A little bit on the cover, just basically what is the Phaucet program, the benefits of using Phaucet, soil moisture sensors, analyzing the sensor data, and then just kind of sum it up at the end. Okay, so what is Phaucet? Phaucet is just a computer hole selection software that allows you to properly size the holes to punch in the poly pipe so that the water reaches the end of the field at the same time. It uses just flow rate, field dimensions, and elevations, some basic calculations within the software to generate the hole sizes. This is just an example that I give that kind of shows what your field would look like with Phaucet and without Phaucet. This side over here kind of shows you what it looks like without. These two fields are being watered at the same time. You can see the one to the north is completely watered out, and one to the south is not even close. If you look on the other side, that kind of gives you an idea of what it would look like with Phaucet, with all the water moving down the field at the same time. Just some benefits of using Phaucet. It can help you save up to 25% of your pumping costs. Takes all the guesswork out, which saves time and money. The employees love it. I know in our case, we have guys that have been fooling with the poly pipe for 7 or 8 years, and they pretty well had a pretty good feel for it, had it pretty well figured out. And then whenever I got back and set everything up on the Phaucet program, now they won't punch a hole without having the book with the proper hole sizes, because it eliminates all the guesswork. Every well is basically set to the same RPM, to where they have a certain set point, and then once they punch the holes, they know they don't have to go back and check it for any leaks or busted poly pipe. So they definitely like that. Like I said, it eliminates the busted poly pipe. It keeps the poly pipe full the entire length. Lets you know how you need to water. Do you need to split your field in half, running 2 runs versus 1? Just to be able to get across that field within that 24-hour window. This is just an example of a bunch of the sensors that are out there. There's a wide range of sensors to choose from. I guess just kind of basically just whatever kind of fits your either your budget or your setup, or whichever. The sensors we use are the AquaCheck sensors. This is an example of different sensors that they have. They're the only ones that have a fully wireless probe, as you can see over in the top right corner right there, which goes back to a wireless data logger. You go out to the field and it gets the data off of it wirelessly. You go back to your computer and upload it. They also have the wired probes, which will connect to a telemetry unit, which those will update real time, so you can just pull it up on an app. This year they did come out with a new logger. I think they kind of released it before it was 100% ready, because we did run into some issues with the communication between the probe and the logger, but I think they finally got all that worked out. I use the AgSense telemetry units for the wired probes. This was our first year using them this past year, and definitely seem to be pretty reliable, user friendly, and they have the WagNet app. These are the 2 online softwares that we use. The AgriTrend is what we use with the wireless probes, and then of course with the telemetry we had the WagNet. It's pretty simple website. Had the app and seemed to be pretty user friendly. As far as where to locate the sensors, the best places I found to put them were about 3/4 of the way down the row length, and I'm gonna say anywhere from 100 to 200 feet off the turn rows, about where I try to put them. 1, easy access, and 2, it's far enough into the field to try to get a pretty accurate reading across the whole field. And you definitely want to pick a spot that has pretty good representation of the population across the entire field. As far as how many sensors to use, this is to me kind of a big question for us. I mean, how many are you supposed to use? Ideally, I guess you would want to do one per field, but that's not very realistic. So from what I found, either one per well or watering set to where that makes a circle. You definitely want one for different soil types, one for different crop types, whether it's corn, soybeans, and then different crop ages. You don't want to have one sensor representing crops that were planted 2 weeks apart, because they're going to hit peak water use at different stages. Some of the software and data, this is just kind of an example of the online software. It gives you a list of all your probes, aerial photograph. That shows where all the probes are located. Then you click on each one to give you a graph. These are volumetric probes, so you get line graphs that are similar to this, where you can see all the peaks or where there's either watering or rain, and then you see where the down for the water use. This is more of a detailed the sum graph. You can see how it gives you just a basic stair-step data. The down represents a day during the daytime when it's hot, plant's using a lot of moisture, and then at night, I say it basically goes to sleep, it cools off, the plant doesn't use any moisture. So this is basically the kind of data that you look at. You can see here we've got either a rain or a watering. Not a whole lot of activity out of it. You got plant had more moisture than it can handle, so you get a little bit of water logging at the beginning. Then you hit peak water use. Right in here, you're going to see that all the stair steps are basically the same length. This is showing that the plant is basically at peak water use and has adequate amount of moisture, so it's using the same amount of moisture every day. And then here you can see where the stair steps start to get short. This is where moisture is starting to run out. The plant's still trying to use that same amount of moisture, but it's just not there. So it starts getting shorter. This is where your trigger point is. You can also see what the sensors look like at different depths. The sensors we use they range anywhere from 12 to 60 inches. We use the 24 and the 32 mostly, some 40s. And each probe has six sensors at a set of different lengths. And so you can see what the activity is at each depth and see kind of where the plant's pulling all the moisture from and what sensors it's using. Another example of, you can see how early on it's only pulling from the top 2 or 3 sensors, and then as you hit later on in the year when the root system develops, it goes up, starts pulling all the way down to around the 24 inch. So basically, like when to start watering. You can see early on in the season when the crop's still young, not really using any moisture, so it's just basically a flat line up here. And then we hit peak water use, and you can see where it just all of a sudden starts dropping off. Started down, we got a little rain. Down again, you can see where the trigger point is. There, I think this was a rain event that actually brought it back up, so we kind of waited. They had a rain to forecast, waited for that, and caught the rain kind of at the right time on that one. May have been a day or two behind, but it kept us from having to water. Same thing on the back side of it, when to stop watering at the end of the season. You can see here how you get in a steady down, goes back up, and then right in here it basically just kind of flat lines out. It doesn't go down near as far, and that was basically at the end of the season. This is kind of an example of the milk line theory. Theory is when the milk line gets about halfway down the kernel on corn, you can, if you have adequate moisture, you can go ahead and quit. So this was a report on July 9th saying that the milk line was halfway down. And then this is the sensor data that basically backed that up. You can see the entire season, how you had the down, the waterings and the rains, and then there on the other end, around like July 9th, you can see we catch a watering or a rain, and then the plant basically just kind of quits using any moisture. This is a little bit more detailed graph of that. You got about 9 days on this side where you see the down, we irrigate, catch a little rain in between, and you got the same 9 days on that side, and you can see it doesn't make it anywhere near further down. And where that arrow is around the 9th, where the milk line got halfway. We were about half capacity, so we just went ahead and quit, and it never did reach that bottom line again. Another benefit of having the sensors is being able to see what a rain event looks like. This is kind of a prime example of being able to see what rain events. This was about 1.5 inches rain. You can see here. That never did bring it back up to full field capacity. So that kind of gives you an idea. You say, well, I got 2 inches of rain. I still got the same 7 to 10 days. That may not necessarily be the case. So it gives you an idea to always know where you are. Same thing whenever you irrigate to see how adequate your irrigation was. This was actually on some soybeans that was on a sugarcane bed that was 72 inches wide. I had the probe in the middle of it, and it was kind of on a mixed soil type, kind of sealing soil. And the water got rushed to the end about half the time it was supposed to take to put out the 3 acre inches. Went back and looked at the probe, and it never even registered. So came back about 2 days later, hit it again. You can see at that point where it finally penetrated. So in this case, it kind of shows where possibly a surge valve would come into place. Same thing here. You can see all your what your watering events look like and all your rain events. This was on sugar cane as well. And you can see down at the other end where we just kind of quit. That was getting about where we're getting ready to start harvesting, so we were going ahead and shutting the watering down. Same thing here on sugarcane. It's always been a pretty big question of whether or not we have to even water sugarcane, and looking at the probe data, it definitely shows where it would benefit. And this year it really showed up. Just kind of sum things up as far as using Phaucet and soil moisture sensors. To me, if you don't have anything set up on Phaucet, the sensors are basically useless because if your water's not getting across the field evenly and you put a sensor in the field, you may have it in a spot that either water may not get to, or it may hit that sensor way before it hits any of the rest of the field. So if he's not set up on Phaucet, in my opinion, the sensors are basically useless. And in my opinion, before even starting to use Phaucet or the sensors, check your pump systems, make sure that everything's set up as efficient as you can get as far as the pump, the motor, and make sure that you have adequate amount of water. The Phaucet sensors are not as effective if you don't have an efficient irrigation system. You may be wasting money before you ever even get started. Also, you need to be able to get across the field within 24 hours using the Phaucet system or even pipe planter, whichever one. I use Phaucet just because I started with it before pipe planter even got out. And so you definitely want to hit that 24-hour trigger window. If you can't get across the field within 24 hours, may need to look at possibly splitting it up, modifying your field, or just running 2 runs of pilot pipe, or possibly looking at even surge valves. Any questions?
What's your average field acre that you got that on?
Our average field acres, all of our irrigated stuff is anywhere from 20 to 35. We really don't get anything bigger than that. We try to keep it below that 40 acre. We don't really like them big fields. It takes too long to get across. Short runs, we'll go wider, but not. We don't really like long runs. Any other questions?
When do you typically install your sensors?
We'll typically install them right after we plant and put out that first run of fertilizer. That's whenever we try to put our sensors in right behind that.
And when do you pull them?
We pull them typically whenever we see that the plant's fully mature and is not using any more moisture. We'll pull them in, or we'll maybe leave them in right before harvest, and then we'll pull them back out.
Have you investigated, like you talked about some of your graphs, you're looking at the slope of the graph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Determine when you irrigate. I don't have any experience coming from Georgia, so I don't have any experience with poly pipe or furrow irrigation, but even from center pivot side, sometimes it takes us a day or 2, 3 days to irrigate. If you looked into trying to be a little more predictive and say, all right, I see what this plant cycle is doing.
Yep.
And I know approximately what my forecast is, whether you want to rely on it or not, right? If you got a big storm system, you'll hold off. But
right.
And trying to start your system a little earlier than before you hit that.
Yeah.
You know, that slight slope, so you ensure that we don't actually see stress, right? We're trying to prevent the stress.
Exactly. And see, and you can actually set a bottom line on here.
Mhm.
And I don't typically use them because I'm watching them every day. So I want to be able to watch this graph and see what it's doing, because as the plant grows and it matures, that trigger point may actually get extended. So
You just kind of try to adjust.
you just gotta adjust as you go. I mean, to me, it's about like everything else, whether you watching this or you watching the market. It's an everyday process. And to me, yeah, you can set it to where you send you an alert if it gets to a certain point, but in my opinion, I just soon watch it every day. Because it's going to change as you go.
I'd like to comment to that. I think that speaks volumes, because that's one of the things we're trying to push to some of our producers is, you know, a lot of guys, you do just point measurements on some soil moisture sensors, you go out there, but having the ability to have live data, sometimes it is worth that extra investment you're putting into it, because when you're able to watch that graph live, you kind of get reactive to it.
Exactly.
You get to know what you expect, and you get a feel for it a lot better.
Yep. Because, I mean, it's kind of like they got those portable ones that you can just stick in the ground and you get a reading at that point, but what does that tell you? I mean, if you haven't watching the previous data on what the plant's actually doing, to me, it doesn't really give you adequate data.
Well, even some of these, like I've worked with some of the AquaCheck probes this year too. We've got the ones with the wireless shuttle on them, and we were monitoring more than scheduling. But even if you were trying to schedule and you're only collecting the data 2 or 3 times a week, you know, by the time you get this graph, you may already be behind. You may already miss some stuff that you need to see.
Yeah, you got to get a feel for it and know when you are in peak water use and kind of how many days have you gone without any kind of rain event or irrigation. So you got to kind of schedule that as you go.
So if getting behind is an issue that you run into, I normally recommend doing an irrigation schedule, like a soil water balance, as well as the sensor, so that you can see how many days it's been and kind of predict. And so you know when you're starting to look for that point where you need to pull the trigger.
At least gives them an idea.
Exactly. But you need access to good weather data to make that work.
How many gallons a minute do you have running down your furrows?
Depends on the well. I mean, where we are, we kind of have pretty adequate water, anywhere from it may be 1,500 to 3,000 gallons a minute, depending on the well. We have some that even go as high as 4,000 gallons a minute, and in which case we'll split it up and run 2 runs at a time at that point. But on average, I don't say 2,000, probably what we have average running down the field.
And then how many water furrows would you have running?
The width of our fields are usually anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500. Some of them may even get closer to 2,000, just depending on the layout. And we're on 36-inch beds. On our row crop up to the north, we're all on 36s, and to the south, we have the sugarcane. We're on 72s.
And you got poly pipe running with your 4,000 gallons a minute?
No, in that case, we'll split it up into 2 runs. With each one will have 2,000 gallons a minute. Yep. I think the most I've pushed through them is I have done some 3,000 gallon a minute ones where we were pushing it a really long way with some 18-inch poly pipe. I think I've had, the furthest I went was either 23 or 2,500 gallons a minute over about 3,300 feet. At that point, it kind of gets hard to make the whole thing work out because the field was really odd shaped, but it keeps it full all the way to the end. So.
How often do you go back and recalculate everything for your Phaucet fruit? I mean, how often do you go back and check your well strength and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I just checked everything. I guess this will be our 3rd year. So I'm going to say probably about every 5 years. I got some that I know we've made some changes to either motors or things like that I know I got to go back and check, or just looking at the way things watered out. I got a few changes I may go back and make as far as on the Phaucet part before I was actually checking the wells. I mean, unless you know you're in an area where you have a lot of drawdown,
Right.
then as far as checking them very often, I don't really see it.
Y'all don't get as much of an adjustment when the river goes up and down
Not really.
where you are.
Mm-hmm. The wells seem to be able to hold it all
They're
year.
more consistent, I
Yep.
guess. Okay. I understand.
Yep. All right.
Brand.
Turn it over to Station.